Welcome to the Dice Tower, a video show about board games. Today, we'll be taking a look at the top 10 board and card games from the year 2012, according to Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here, and today I'm going to be doing my top 10 games of 2012. Now that the year is over and the world didn't end, I'm going to wrap up my first full year with the Dice Tower by going over some of the games that I think were best from all of those released over the past year. You're going to see several games from Essen, you're going to see several games from Gen Con, and all of them, even though I won't have reviewed all of them just yet, you will be seeing reviews from, or I've already done, but nonetheless, all of them are great games. So real quick, we're going to go from 10 to 1. You'll see all of the games. I'll explain a little bit about each of them. If you want, you can look up more information about them or keep your eyes open for my upcoming reviews. But know that I think these are some of the best games to be released over the past year.
Number 10, Guildhall.
All right, well, the first game, number 10, on my list this year is going to be Guildhall by AEG. Now, this is a game that I just got my hands on relatively recently, but it's one that very quickly, I think, made its way onto the list and is deserving of its spot in number 10. Now, the reason this game is so great, this is a card game. It plays anywhere from 2 to 4 players, and it's a game in which you're trying to collect sets of cards in order to turn them into victory points. The thing is as you collect these cards, they move into your guild area, and as they move into your guild area, the more of those cards you play, which have to be of different color of the professions you already have, the better the cards will get. However, you want to collect a full set of 5, and once you do so, they turn immediately into a currency that can be used to buy victory points. This makes for a very interesting dynamic where you're trying to trade cards with other players to get specific cards into your area and keep them underneath 5 cards, while getting other cards into your area and get them all the way up to 5 to trade in to buy cards, which may either give you victory points or victory points and abilities. So there's a lot interesting going on here. I think it's a very interesting use of a card game mechanic, one that I haven't really seen before, kind of set collection with ability-based cards, and one that I think that everybody should check out. That's Guildhall, number 10 for 2012 Games of the Year by AEG.
Number 9, Myroness.
Well, with that said, we're going to move from a card game into a Euro game. This is another Essen release, and this is Mermes by Yasari Games. It's one that I have done a review of recently, so you can check that out if you want to see it, but this is my number 9 choice for games of 2012. This is going to be a game for 2 to 4 players. Again, very Euro style, and takes the theme of ants and utilizes it. So there haven't been many ant games out there. There's Antics, and there's this one. And I think there's a game called Ants. But in this one, you're using different types of workers, one base worker, the nurse. In order to get more types of workers, you have soldiers and workers, in order to send them out to do various things in the garden or perform actions inside your hive. It's not a very forgiving game. You really have to maximize your actions, something I like a lot in Euro games, and I think Mermes performs that very well. So if you're looking for a good, maybe a little bit challenging but very thematic Euro game, check out Mermes and check my review for it if you'd like more information.
Number 8, Pax Piccarona.
Number 8 on my 2012 Games of the Year is one that I haven't covered yet as well. It's going to be a game, a smaller game that I've had for a little while now, and I need to get to the table for review, but that is Pax Porfiriana from Sierra Madre Games. Now, Sierra Madre Games has brought you titles like High Frontier, Bios Megafauna, and this is a smaller tableau-style game, kind of, this is going to be a vague comparison, or not vague, but kind of a light comparison, Glory to Rome or things like that, where you're using cards, you're getting cards in your hand, you're playing them out to the table in order to perform functions, but cards serve multiple functions, like a card can be an enterprise, a card can be a partner, but those cards can eventually potentially turn into victory points if you do the right thing. So in this game, there are different regimes, and depending on the regime, the victory condition is different, depending on when that regime is toppled. At the end of a toppling, you check and see if you have victory points in more than the regime plus your opponent's total score, and if you have more victory points in that type than your opponents, you're going to win. So you're going to be playing cards to the table, trying to win victory points from different regimes or different types of victory points, being things like revolution or command. And whoever has the most command points at the end of a certain regime, for example, would win, or whoever has more command points than the regime plus their opponents totaled would win. So very interesting dynamics here, a lot of stuff changing in the game. If you like tableau-style games, one I would definitely suggest checking out. That's Pax Porfiriana, number 8 for 2012.
Number 7, Terra Mystica.
Hey, you can Game number 7 on my 2012 top 10 is going to be one that I've reviewed previously. Another Essen title, we have Terra Mystica. Now, this game is one that offers 14 different factions for play. You're going to be placing workers and placing tiles out on the board and using power and various different currencies in order to try and accomplish building towns out in an area of changing terrain. You can manipulate the terrain, and your faction can only build on one type of terrain. The game has a lot going on. There's a lot of different things you need to manage, a lot of ways to score points. And as I said, it has some unique concepts in form of changing that terrain, making sure you can build, and trying to build next to your opponents in order to accomplish cheaper building prices, but trying not to build next to them too much in the fear that you'll give them too much of an advantage because it grants them some currency when you do so. So there's a lot of trying to manipulate board position, a lot of trying to build areas in order to get like the largest area, or to finish and get a certain number of buildings in the same area in order to get bonuses. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of interesting mechanics. Great Euro game. Check out Terra Mystica. Terra Mystica has only a German publisher right now, Fuhrerland publisher. Plays anywhere up to 5 players, about a half an hour per player, but a great game.
Number 6, Antique Whale.
Continuing in the pattern of having Euro games on my top 10, game number 6 is going to be yet another Euro game that I've reviewed previously. We're going to be talking about Antique Duellum here, which is a 2-player game by Mac Gertz, who is infamous or famous for using the rondelle mechanic in his games, in which you take a piece, you have one piece, and you move it around a rondelle in order to take actions. Now, in this one, you're using that in order to try and colonize the board, or in order to get more ships out, or in order to build more temples. There are several different objectives. Each of these objectives will give you a card, and each one of those cards is a victory point. So the objective may be to get 5 cities on the board, or maybe to get 3 temples. And multiples of that will give you multiple cards, which will be multiple victory points. There's conflict, there's map control, there's tech tree advancement, kind of. There's all types of different things going on in this game. They're all very interesting, and the rondelle mechanic is really cool because if you want to take one of the closer actions to your position, 1 through 3 spaces away, it's free, but the further you want to go, the more it's going to cost you in terms of resources, and you can generate those resources and use them to advance around the wheel faster. So if that sounds interesting to you, check out Antique Duellum. The publisher on this is PD Verlag. Right now, I'm sure you'll see a US version of it soon, but a great 2-player Euro game, one that does a great job of adapting Antique, the larger player or more player game, to a smaller 2-player format, and gives you a couple different boards to play.
Number 5, Internet Runner.
All right, stepping away from Euro games for a moment, we're going to go back to a card game, and we're going to take a look at Android Netrunner. Now, this was a Gen Con release, so a lot of you have probably seen this by now, and if you haven't, you may have been familiar with the CCG designed by Richard Garfield quite some time back when Wizards of the Coast had the property for it. But Netrunner is another 2-player game in which one player is going to play the runner, who is kind of a hacker, and the other player is going to play the corporation, which is typically labeled as an evil corporation trying to hide or keep data away from the public, but they may not actually be evil. It all depends on how you look at it. So in this game, you have 2 diametrically opposed sides, and they have different play styles. One is trying to get in and steal data from the other player, and the other player is simply trying to prevent this and to do as much damage, be it body damage or mental damage or whatever it is, to the other player in order to incapacitate them and make them unable to continue their runs. There's a lot of strategy in the game. You can deck build. They're going to be releasing expansions for this. The first one is already out. There will be several more to come. So this is in the living card game style from Fantasy Flight. But I'd expect to see a lot of this coming out as a very well-designed CCG, and I think that Netrunner, Android Netrunner, is going to be a very well-implemented LCG now that they've figured it out and kind of updated the card style, figured out ways to avoid some of the rarity issues that are involved in CCGs. All around a great way to get into what was an excellent CCG, now a great LCG, Netrunner.
Number 4, Seasons.
My number 4 pick for the top games of 2012 is going to be one that was a huge hit at Gen Con, and that is Seasons. Now, this is a game for, again, 2 to 4 players, which seems to be a very popular range, but this is another one that kind of plays off of the CCG style a little bit. Now, it's not a deck builder, it's not a game where you're going to have your own deck of cards even, but it's kind of a drafter a little bit more. You're going to get a hand of cards at the beginning, you're going to draft from those with all the other players, and then you're going to use those cards and split them into 3 different ages. You'll have 9 cards, 3 cards per age, in order to try and play them to the board by collecting elements, which will be used through a dice drafting mechanic, where you roll dice and each player picks a die to give them different benefits, be it elements which you use to play cards, or victory points, or the ability to transmute your elements into victory points, or even more cards to play. So you're trying to best use these elements and draft the appropriate cards and use them at the appropriate times in the game in order to score the most victory points by the end, either through playing a lot of cards that are worth points or through using various game effects that get you points. So there's a lot going on there. There's a base set of cards that this comes with. I'm sure there are more cards to come. It's going to be easily expandable. The base set of cards, you can either play with a pre-formed starting hand, or you can play with the random starting by dealing out 9 cards from the shuffled deck and drafting from that. But either way, I think there's a lot to go on here, a lot of different ways or different combinations of cards you can see, a lot of different things you can play, or a lot of different styles you can play. All around a great game. Seasons, my number 4 pick for games of 2012.
Number 3, Soken.
Now we're into the top 3 games, and number 3 is going to be an Essen release that I got not too long ago. It's seen several plays at this point. I've reviewed it, and that is Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar, which plays from 2 to 4 players, plays pretty quick. I think it plays in about an hour and a half, but introduces a new mechanic into it, or a new take on worker placement, where you're placing your workers on a lower return position, and as time goes on, the wheel will rotate, and he will become a better worker. He'll provide a better return on his removal. So on your turn, you either place or remove workers at whatever the cost may be. Placing has a cost, removing has no cost. But the longer you wait to remove a specific worker, the better his return will be. So he may start out only producing like 4 food, but if you leave him on long enough, the gear will turn and he'll return with more food, be it all the way up to, I believe, 7 or 9 even. You can earn victory points from a variety of ways, be it pleasing the gods or obtaining crystal skulls and spending those to get victory points. You can build monuments for end of game, and there's so many different currencies. There's corn and wood and stone and crystal skulls, and it's something like 5 different currencies that you have to manage, but it's all very elegantly done and very easy to keep track of, I think, the way that it's implemented. So it takes this nice new mechanic, introduces it to an old style of game, worker placement, and makes it nice and refreshing. So if that sounds good to you, check out my review of Tzolk'in and buy the game for yourself. I can't recommend it more. A great Euro game from 2012.
Number 2, CO2.
Number 2 is going to be a Euro game, probably the best Euro game of 2012, or best pure Euro game of 2012. I'd say that, best pure Euro game of 2012, and that's going to be CO2 by Vital Lacerda. Now, he is the designer of a game that I enjoy quite a bit, which is Vinhos, and he's done a great job again in CO2. Now, several things I like about this game. One is the theme. I think it has a great theme. We're talking about a game here that is about building green energy, trying to save the world from increased carbon dioxide emissions. Very unique. The artwork is fantastic. You can see here this cover is almost like a painting. It's kind of interesting. Really cool. On top of that, it has a little bit of a mechanic of working together to save the world. As I just mentioned, you're trying to lower CO2 emissions, build greener energy, and building that greener energy keeps CO2 down. And if you don't do so, everyone will lose the game. However, you don't want to work together too much because doing so will provide your opponents with expertise that is greater than yours and make them obviously better than you at getting victory points. So you want to be careful there. The game starts off a little bit slow. You're trying to ramp up your expertise to lay the foundations for building specific types of power plants by getting the projects set out there, and you need those projects in order to build the power plants. But you can start a project and someone else can jump in on it and take it from you. But if they do so, you'll get a benefit for it. So there's a aspect of trying to start the right projects to use them for yourself, but maybe sometimes to even entice other people to take them from you to advance their own position, but give you a benefit. All in all, I think it has a lot of interesting aspects. There's a lot of different ways to earn victory points, be it buying these carbon footprint points from the market and selling them at a profit later, or building the right power plants, or there's just all types of different things you can do. It's a great game. I haven't reviewed it yet, but I will be soon. Definitely check out CO2. This is a Stronghold Games production, one that I think is great and will be, or it is one of the best games of 2012.
Number 1, Flying Break.
And my top game of 2012 is going to be Rolling Freight by Ape Games. Now, this was a Gen Con 2012 release, and this should not be surprising to anybody who watched my review of it or who follows me on Twitter and realizes that I talk about this game all the time. Now, it gets top overall game. I'm still going to mention that CO2 gets top pure Euro game of the year, which to me is a big distinction because this is a train game, not a pure Euro game, but nonetheless, this is the best game of the year. And the reason is it takes a type of game that I enjoy, which is going to be route building and pick up and deliver, and it adds a new element to it in the rolling of dice. Now, again, if you watch my reviews, you know that I usually don't like dice in my games. I prefer diceless games or things that use cards instead, a way to mitigate luck. But the way that dice are implemented in Rolling Freight is that you have your own population of dice that you're rolling, and on each side of these dice there's color or multiple colors, could be 2, 4, or even some different icons that adjust the way you play the game. Some of them are generic colorless dice. Some of them give you bonuses when you use them to deliver. But you roll these dice, and you can spend these dice on different things in the game, be it buying more routes, or building your routes, or buying improvements for your play area, that give you more dice, or they give you the ability to have other people use your tracks cheaper, but they give you more points for doing so. Or you can even buy things that let you deliver cheaper, so that you have to spend fewer dice to deliver goods. But all in all, it takes this dice thing, and it de-randomizes it in a way, because you may not always roll the color combination of what you need in order to do what you want, but there is always something you can do with your dice. And if you don't find something that you think is worth doing, you can carry some of those dice over to future turns in order to utilize them later. So it takes what seems like a random concept and places it into a game that shouldn't have anything random really, and doesn't make it random, so random that it's unbearable. It just adds a nice element of controlled chaos to the game. I think that's the way I would explain it. So this game is great. It has 2 maps, an introductory or a beginner, although it's not all that beginner, and a more advanced map, and they're releasing more maps for it in the future, so I think there's a lot to look forward to here in terms of things that they can do to expand it, things that they can do to make it even better, things they can do to keep it fresh as time goes on. Well, there you have it. That is my 10 picks for top games of 2012. A heavy Euro game choice of selections. A lot of Euros you'll note on there, but several card games, some 2-player games, and some train games that I think that you guys can enjoy. Now, remember that these are my personal choices. These are not a mandated list of the best games of 2012 as voted on by a panel. These are just selections from the games that I have been able to play over the last year that were released in the last year that I think are exceptional examples of game design and game implementation from 2012. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Judge whether you think these games are going to be good for you. Buy them if you like them, but note that there are several other different types of tastes that don't fall underneath my own, games that I wouldn't really consider to play with my group, and thus aren't really considered for my top 10 games of 2012. With that said, I think these are all exceptional games. If you trust my taste or you think that they sound interesting to you, check them out, and I hope everybody has a great 2013.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at DicetowerNews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.